You are alive at a time when the internet feels almost like air, everywhere and invisible. It moves through cables under the sea and wires in the walls. It slips through the sky as radio waves from towers and satellites. You cannot see it, but it is present in small glowing screens, in quiet notifications, in the way your phone lights up with messages, maps, and memories. Right now, somewhere on Earth, in a dark room full of softly humming machines, a data center pushes light down fiber optic cables. Little pulses of light, switching on and off in patterns, carry photographs, music, and messages. They rush through glass fibers thinner than a hair at almost the speed of light. A picture that was taken on a mountain in one country can appear on a phone in another country in a fraction of a second, as if the mountain itself reached out and tapped someone on the shoulder. In another part of the world, a ship sails slowly across the ocean. Deep beneath it, at the bottom of the sea, lies a quiet network of cables, resting on the cold, dark seabed. These cables cross entire oceans, connecting continents like long, patient roots. Around them, fish drift, currents curl, and the cables simply lie there, carrying enormous rivers of information between continents, silently, day and night. On land, towers rise above cities, fields, and forests. They look ordinary, a metal lattice, a few dishes, some antennas, but they are part of a vast system that allows voices, videos, and documents to leap between moving cars, trains, and houses. Someone in a quiet village can have a live conversation with someone in a crowded city half a world away, because invisible waves ripple gently through the air between towers and devices. The internet reaches into everyday routines in ways that often go unnoticed. A person wakes up in the morning and reaches for their phone before they even sit up. They check the weather, but the forecast is not just numbers on a screen. It is the product of satellites, ocean buoys, and supercomputers, all feeding data into models, sending predictions back through the network to a simple app. Someone else walks into a kitchen and asks a small speaker about the time, or the news, or the song that is playing. Inside that speaker is a tiny computer, but the real work is happening somewhere else, in distant servers that receive the question, process it, and return an answer in less than a second. The person hears a friendly voice, but behind it is a vast, hidden world of code and hardware. In hospitals, the internet carries scans, test results, and patient records from one department to another. A doctor in one building reads an image taken in another building, and sometimes even in another city. In control rooms, engineers quietly watch grids of blinking lights and graphs, monitoring power networks and water systems, making sure that electricity and clean water flow where they should. Many of these systems rely on data moving smoothly over networks. Shops depend on the internet for payments and stock management. When you tap a card on a terminal, a quick conversation happens in the background between your bank and the store. The terminal sends a request, the bank checks your account, and an approval comes back. All of this happened through encrypted messages flying along cables and through the air in a heartbeat. Planes fly from one continent to another, guided not only by radar and radio, but also by digital maps, satellite signals, and data links. Ships crossing the ocean send their positions and weather data through satellites. Freight trains and trucks are tracked across countries. Goods move in patterns that are planned and adjusted using maps, algorithms, and constant communication. The internet also quietly shapes the softer parts of life. Friendships, relationships, and work communities spread across borders. Grandparents see their grandchildren on video calls. People learn new skills through videos and online courses. Artists share their work with people they will never meet in person. Someone lying awake at night can reach for their phone, and in that small rectangle of light, the entire world seems to be there, just a touch away. Even small, ordinary moments carry the trace of the internet. Someone orders a takeaway meal, and the restaurant receives it through a tablet beside the counter. A driver follows a route drawn on a map that constantly updates with traffic information. A student submits an assignment through an online portal instead of handing a paper sheet to a teacher. Underneath all of this, in layer after layer, there are protocols and servers, cables and chips. Packets of data are sliced into tiny pieces, addressed, routed, and reassembled. Devices identify each other with addresses that look like strange strings of numbers. Routers decide where each packet should go. Firewalls filter traffic. Caches store repeated requests. It is an entire hidden ecosystem of technology, humming quietly in the background of our days and nights. For many people, the difference between the physical world and the digital world has grown softer. You can work in a room in one city while your colleagues sit in a different city or a different country, and yet you appear together in a shared virtual space. You can read news from many countries, watch live streams from space, explore maps of places you have never visited, and see images taken on Mars or on the ocean floor. This is the Earth as it is now, wrapped in a web of connectivity. Not everyone is connected, and not all connections are equal, but the influence of the internet reaches into finance, transport, healthcare, education, entertainment, and personal life. It is as if a nervous system has grown over the surface of the planet, carrying signals and responses in a thin, bright layer of electrons and light. Imagine for a moment looking down at Earth from orbit on an ordinary night. You see the familiar pattern of city lights glowing on the dark side of the planet, clusters of brightness where people gather, and long threads of light where highways and towns connect. If you could see the internet as light as well, the picture would be even richer. You would see pulses of data moving through undersea cables between continents, bursts of activity rising from cities when people wake up or when they come home from work, and tiny flickers from rural areas when someone checks a message or streams a video. Inside this glowing network, your own life is a small, unique pattern. The messages you send, the videos you watch, the maps you open, the searches you type, all create little ripples in the digital sea. You are one person among billions, yet each pattern of use is different, shaped by your language, your interests, your relationships, your curiosities. It can feel comforting, sometimes, to know that if you need information, it is there. If you feel lonely, you can reach out. If you want to learn, you can search for an answer. The internet did not create human curiosity or community, but it gave them a new space to flow through. Now, as you lie here listening, imagine that we gently pause this world, just for a moment. Imagine all the devices, all the cables, all the servers, all the satellites, all holding their breath. The world is exactly as it is now, with the same cities, the same mountains, the same oceans, the same people living their normal evenings and mornings. No one yet knows that anything is about to change. In apartments and houses, screens glow quietly. In offices, servers process requests. In warehouses, robots read instructions sent over wireless networks. The air is filled with invisible signals. The seabed is lined with cables. The sky carries the faint traces of satellite communications. We will stay here for a little while, in this calm before the break, understanding just how thoroughly woven this invisible system has become. Because only when we feel its presence, like a constant background hum, can we fully imagine what happens when the hum stops. Not for a moment or an outage, but as a final, permanent silence. As you continue to relax, you can picture yourself in a familiar place in this connected world. Perhaps you are sitting in a quiet room with a lamp on and your phone charging beside you. Perhaps you are in a small cafe with the soft sound of cups and voices around you, and a sign on the wall offering free Wi-Fi. Perhaps you are on a train, watching the landscape slide past while you scroll through a feed of messages and pictures. Notice how normal it feels, how ordinary, how unremarkable to have access to almost any piece of information, any time, from almost anywhere. It is like turning on a tap and expecting water, like flicking a switch and expecting light. Hold that feeling gently in your mind, because it will be the contrast for everything that comes next. In the next part of our journey, we will step into the moment when that tap turns and nothing comes out, when the switch flips and nothing lights up, when the invisible web that has held so many parts of modern life together simply vanishes. We will move into the immediate aftermath of the internet going offline forever, watching as people reach instinctively for a world that is no longer there. For now, you can take another slow breath, feeling your body a little heavier than before, your thoughts a little softer. The world as it is now is busy and connected, but here, in this moment, you do not need to respond to it. You can just listen as the story carries you toward that fragile, quiet turning point, where the last packets of data flicker through the wires and the planet's digital nervous system goes still. When the change arrives, it does not come with a sound. There is no explosion, no warning, no flash of light in the sky. It happens quietly, like someone blowing out a candle in a distant room. The internet does not end with a dramatic moment, but with a gradual fading that spreads across the world like an invisible wave. Somewhere, deep in a data center, a single server experiences a fault far beyond anything it was designed to handle. Lights on the front panel flicker, then go dark. The machines beside it continue humming, unaware. A few milliseconds later, another failure blooms, then another, as if the fault is moving through the circuitry like a shadow slipping beneath a door. This moment is happening not in one place, but in many, almost at the same time. Under the ocean, a cable that has carried data faithfully for years begins to fail at a microscopic level. A tiny crack forms, so small it would be invisible to a camera. Salt water seeps into places it was never meant to touch. The signal weakens, then drops. High in orbit, a communication satellite receives a corrupted update that freezes its processors. It continues to circle the Earth silently, its antennas pointing in the wrong direction, no longer responding to commands from the ground. None of these failures alone would be catastrophic. Ordinarily, systems would route around the problem. Traffic would flow through different cables. Satellites would hand off to others. Backup servers would come online. But on this night, for reasons no one will fully understand, too many failures happen too close together. Redundancies begin to overlap. Automatic systems loop endlessly, unable to stabilize the network. Somewhere in a control room, an engineer frowns at a screen. It looks like a minor outage, a blip, something that will resolve on its own. In another building, someone resets a router, expecting it to spring back to life. In an office tower, a server farm switches to backup power, but the backup systems are already overwhelmed by the cascading faults spreading through the global network. Within minutes, enormous sections of the Internet's backbone begin to fall out of sync. Small signs appear first. A phone hesitates before loading a page. A video pauses. A message shows a spinning wheel instead of sending. People frown at their screens without thinking much of it. Network hiccups happen all the time. The taps usually start running again within a few seconds. Traffic lights continue changing. Cars continue moving. Street lamps glow. Life continues exactly as it always has. In homes, people tap their screens again, waiting. Someone refreshes their email. Someone else checks their connection on a router and sees the familiar glowing lights. Everything looks normal, yet nothing is working. At this moment, no one knows they are witnessing the final minutes of global connectivity. Across the ocean, undersea cable networks experience simultaneous routing failures. Packets are sent but never arrive. Servers retry, piling request after request into queues that grow too fast to handle. Machines begin to freeze one by one, as if the digital world is slowly turning to ice. In a satellite control center, an operator tries to reset a link. The command is sent, but the satellite no longer hears it. Another operator tries the backup channel. Nothing. They make a note to escalate the issue. They do not yet feel urgency. They have seen satellite glitches before. They have not seen every satellite in that constellation glitch at once. On the ground, power stations continue humming softly. Water systems continue pumping. But behind the scenes, some of the monitoring systems that keep these utilities stable begin failing silently. They do not shut down immediately, but the data they send is no longer being received. Graphs freeze. Status indicators stall on outdated information. Still, no alarms ring. Everything looks slightly off, but not alarming. In living rooms around the world, people see no connection on their televisions. Someone sighs and restarts the router. Someone else checks their phone's settings. Another person opens a map app and watches a blank screen appear where a route used to be. A few people notice their smart devices are unresponsive. Doorbells that once showed camera feeds now show static. Thermostats flash error codes but keep the temperature steady for now. Voice assistants fall silent. People ask a question and the device lights up but says nothing. The first true wave of confusion begins when businesses notice they cannot process payments. A customer taps their card and the terminal hangs, stuck in the verification step. The cashier apologizes, tries again and again, but the terminal refuses to connect. People shrug. They take out cash if they have any. Some stores switch to cash-only signs taped hastily to the door. In airports, boarding systems freeze. Screens stop updating. Planes ready for departure must wait because passenger data cannot be verified. Pilots sit in cockpits waiting for clearance that cannot arrive because the digital channel carrying the clearance is down. In hospitals, nurses try to update digital records. The screens do not refresh. Doctors attempt to access patient files and see error messages where charts should be. Backup paper systems exist, but few people have needed them in years. They begin to gather clipboards, pens, and printouts to continue their work. In newsrooms, journalists notice feeds going silent. Live streams break. Websites stop updating. A few reporters turn to radios to check if it's a local issue, but the radio broadcasts carry on normally, blissfully unaware. In busy cities, people keep checking their phones, expecting the outage to fix itself. But instead, the inconsistency slowly turns into a firm, solid stillness. No app loads. No message sends. No website responds. It feels unusual now, more than a hiccup, less than an emergency, but strange enough to stir a quiet unease. In bedrooms and kitchens, in offices and trains, in airports and supermarkets, people begin to feel something they rarely feel. The sense of being disconnected in a way that is not voluntary. People refresh their screens again, as if trying to wake a sleeping animal. But the animal is gone now. It has slipped away without a sound. Gradually, the outage becomes too widespread to deny. People begin checking with friends and family. Is your internet down too? My phone won't load anything. Is the Wi-Fi broken? Mine too. It's down everywhere. In some places, people shrug it off. In others, especially where digital systems run everything from banking to public transport, the air thickens with tension. News stations switch to prepared scripts, explaining that there is a temporary global outage. They expect systems to return shortly. But even these broadcasts begin to fade as the news stations themselves lose access to their servers and communication pipelines. On social media, posts stop mid-scroll. The last messages freeze in place, a snapshot of the world seconds before the final break. In busy streets, people look at their phones with confusion. In quiet suburbs, someone working late tries to send a file and watches the upload bar freeze permanently. In rural areas, someone who relies on the satellite connection sees the signal indicator go dark. The turning point arrives when the outage reaches banking networks. Cash machines stop responding. Cards stop working everywhere. The warning lights on ATMs blink in a rhythm that suggests something is deeply wrong. In government buildings, emergency teams gather to assess the situation. They discover that they cannot send emails, cannot access shared files, cannot retrieve cloud-based information. They switch to radios which work, but provide only fragments of communication. A quiet alarm begins to spread, but it is not a siren. It is the silence of things that should be speaking. Systems that should be talking to each other refuse to respond. And then, after 30 minutes of confusion, the outage becomes permanent. Not obviously permanent, not declared on a screen or announced by experts, but permanent in the sense that nothing begins coming back online. No recovery begins. No backup system engages. Minutes turn into an hour. An hour turns into several. People start to feel a subtle shift inside themselves, a feeling that something much larger than a casual outage is happening. In restaurants, orders stop coming through apps. Delivery drivers wait outside with nothing to pick up because the digital pipeline linking customers and kitchens has disappeared. In office buildings, cloud services remain unreachable. Work halts. Meetings break apart. People walk to each other's desks in person, rediscovering the rhythm of face-to-face conversation. In schools, digital attendance systems freeze. Teachers bring out paper registers, uncertain but adaptable. In train stations, the ticket gates that rely on real-time verification stop functioning. Staff unlock them manually to keep passengers moving. Trains continue operating for now, guided by radio communication instead of digital scheduling systems. In control centers for power grids, operators switch to analog instruments and fallback procedures. They can keep the lights on, but the monitoring systems that help predict fluctuations are dark. People begin calling one another, trying to understand what is happening. Voice calls still work for now, but some of the infrastructure behind them is partially dependent on the internet. The early calls connect, but the system begins to strain as more people pick up their phones. In some places, the mobile network collapses under the traffic load. Towers continue broadcasting, but the connections are overcrowded. Calls ring but do not connect. People leave voicemails that no one can access. As the hours pass, the world experiences a strange mix of calm and tension. The lights are still on. Water still flows. Cars still move. The physical world seems unchanged. It is the digital layer that has vanished. And with it, the sense of continuous connection that many people took for granted. Night falls in some parts of the world. Morning rises in others. People sit in their homes, staring at devices that have become strangely blank and mute. Some feel anxious. Others feel oddly peaceful. A few feel as if a fog has lifted, though they cannot say why. Governments issue statements through television and radio, reassuring people that the outage is temporary. But behind closed doors, experts stare at screens that refuse to show any signs of recovery. They attempt manual resets, deep resets, rerouting, emergency protocols. But the failures are too widespread, too interconnected. The global network has become an intricate tapestry woven over decades. And now, the threads are breaking faster than anyone can repair them. Each attempt to restore a section is blocked by failures in the sections it depends on. After 12 hours, the truth becomes clear to the small groups working in the highest levels of infrastructure. The internet, as the world knows, it has collapsed beyond repair. But they do not announce this yet. They are not ready. Most people still believe that everything will come back soon. A few wonder. A few fear. A few find comfort in the quiet. As the first full day of disconnection arrives, humanity stands at a threshold. The world has not ended. The sky is still blue. The wind still moves through the trees. But a thread has been cut, a thread that held together billions of lives in invisible ways. And in the days ahead, the consequences will begin to unfold slowly, like the ripples of a stone dropped in a still lake. This is only the beginning. In the first quiet days after the collapse, the world enters a strange in-between space. Life still looks familiar on the surface, yet every day reveals another thread that had been held together by the invisible network that no longer exists. People wake up each morning expecting things to be fixed by now. They reach for their phones out of habit. The screens light up, bright and hopeful, but the apps remain blank, unchanging. Notifications do not appear. Messages do not arrive. The quiet is deeper now, more deliberate. Some try turning their devices off and on again. Others check their routers, their cables, their settings. But soon most people realize that the issue isn't in their home, or their street, or their town. It is something larger, something woven into the entire world. By the second day, many workplaces begin announcing closures. Offices that depend on cloud systems cannot function. Warehouses that rely on digital inventory systems cannot track shipments. Call centers sit silent because their software requires a connection that no longer exists. Employees are told to stay home, check back later, or wait for radio broadcasts with instructions. Supermarkets stay open, but the shelves look slightly different now. Without digital ordering systems, staff must walk the aisles with clipboards, counting what is missing. They do their best to estimate demand, making phone calls to distributors who are themselves relying on paper and pen for the first time in decades. Trucks arrive late, or not at all, because logistics systems that once optimized routes and schedules no longer function. Most stores stop accepting card payments entirely. Cash becomes important again. People dig through drawers looking for coins and old notes. Some stand at ATMs hoping for a miracle, but the machines remain frozen, out of service. A few towns begin setting up local IOU systems, simple handwritten slips allowing people to buy essentials with the promise of settling up later. Trust becomes a form of currency. Banks scramble to organize manual processes, but many of their records are stored digitally with no easy offline access. Staff begin creating temporary ledgers on paper, trying to keep track of withdrawals and deposits. It feels fragile, improvised, but the world keeps turning because it must. Schools remain open in many regions, though the digital systems they once relied on, attendance portals, online homework tools, virtual learning, have fallen silent. Teachers return to blackboards and photocopies. Students bring notebooks instead of tablets. Lessons feel slower, but also strangely focused. Some children barely notice the difference, others feel as if the world has lost one of its colors. Hospitals adapt more quickly than people expect. Medical staff begin using manual charts, file folders, and physical sign-off sheets. The pace is slower, and there is more room for error, but the core of medicine, humans caring for humans, remains steady. There are delays, especially in test results and medication records, but nurses and doctors work tirelessly to fill the gaps with experience, intuition, and teamwork. Ambulances still respond, guided by radios and maps. In some countries, emergency services print out entire city grids and annotate them by hand. It is slower, but still workable. The human instinct to organize and adapt rises quietly to the surface. Public transport continues in most cities, though timetables become unreliable. Without digital systems synchronizing trains and buses, delays ripple across networks. Passengers learn to wait longer, to ask conductors for updates, to stand by chalkboards where staff write times by hand. Some routes are suspended. Others run with unpredictable gaps. People walk more. They talk to each other more while waiting. On the roads, traffic lights continue working, but many of the optimization systems that managed flow patterns are offline. Congestion becomes more common. Roundabouts, for the first time in years, are preferred in many places because they rely on courtesy and instinct rather than digital timing. Parcel deliveries slow dramatically. Warehouses run on half capacity without automated sorting. Drivers navigate using printed directions. Many packages are delayed indefinitely. Some are lost. People begin adapting by visiting local shops again instead of ordering items online. By the third day, national governments issue clearer statements through radio and television, the only mass communication systems still fully intact. The messages are calm, but honest. They acknowledge a global network failure with no expected timeline for restoration. They urge people to conserve resources, remain patient, and avoid travel unless necessary. The public reaction shifts. The first day was confusion, the second, frustration. By the third and fourth days, a kind of quiet acceptance begins to settle. People talk to their neighbors more. They gather in shared spaces to listen to radio updates. Some communities organize bulletin boards in town squares where people leave handwritten notes about events, requests, and local news. Paper, once drifting toward obsolescence, becomes valuable again. Notebooks, envelopes, stamps, printed maps all become essential tools. Libraries, once quiet, fill with people searching for information they can no longer access online. Encyclopedias and old reference books are pulled from shelves, their pages turned with a sense of rediscovered respect. Phone networks remain strained but functional in many places, though voice calls often fail during busy hours. Text messages, which rely on lightweight protocols separate from the internet, continue to work in some regions for a few days longer, but not everywhere. And not reliably. Eventually, even these systems begin degrading as parts of the infrastructure fail without digital monitoring. In some regions, local radio stations become the heartbeat of daily life. Broadcasters read announcements, share updates, and connect communities through simple spoken messages. People tune in at breakfast, at lunch, in the evenings, gathering around speakers like families did generations ago. Nighttime feels different now. Darker, calmer. Without the glow of screens, cities seem dimmer. People go to bed earlier. Some sit outside, noticing the stars more clearly than they have in years. Light pollution begins to drop without the constant presence of digital signage, advertisements, and illuminated windows glowing late into the night. In the first week, something curious happens. Many people report feeling less distracted. Some feel uneasy with the emptiness in their routines. Others feel an unexpected sense of peace, as if a constant noise has faded away. Conversations deepen. Meals last longer. People read more books, write more letters, and take more walks. Not everything is peaceful, of course. There are places where frustration turns to anger. Businesses built entirely on digital systems collapse overnight. Some workers lose income instantly. Some cities experience arguments at shops when payments fail. Some communities feel the strain of uncertainty. But surprisingly, the world does not descend into chaos. The vast majority of people remain calm, adaptable, patient in the face of something too large to control. As long as electricity flows and water runs, society keeps its shape, even if its seams begin to loosen. Travel becomes more complicated by the end of the week. Airlines reduce flights because scheduling systems and digital route planning are offline. Pilots rely on radio instructions and paper charts. Many airports shift to manual boarding processes. It is slow but functional, though some flights are cancelled simply because coordination becomes too complex. International shipping slows as ports revert to manual manifests. Cranes load and unload containers with printed instructions. The process takes longer, but goods still move, though weeks behind schedule. By the 6th and 7th days, people stop checking their screens so often. The habit fades. Phones become clocks, cameras, flashlights. Laptops become useless rectangles of dark glass. Tablets gather dust on coffee tables. In some homes, people place them gently in drawers, unsure whether they will ever wake again. The quiet deepens, and slowly, without fanfare, the world adjusts to the idea that this is no longer a temporary outage. Something fundamental has changed, something invisible but essential. In the first week, a sentence begins to form in the minds of millions of people across the world. It is not spoken aloud very often, but it drifts through thoughts like a slow breeze. What if it never comes back? Most people are not ready to believe that yet. But the question hangs there, waiting. Communities grow closer. Problems grew clearer. Systems begin to creak under the weight of new demands. Solutions begin appearing in unexpected places, simple ones, human ones. This is the end of a week like no other in modern history. A week where the world discovered just how much of its daily rhythm depended on an invisible network of light. And soon, the first month will begin, bringing deeper shifts, quieter changes, and the first hints of long-term transformation. The first month without the internet arrives quietly, like a soft shift in the seasons. The initial confusion has settled into a widespread, steady acceptance. People wake up knowing that nothing will load, knowing that messages will not send, knowing that the small rectangles of glass in their homes have become only clocks and cameras. The disbelief of the first days fades, replaced by a practical, grounded mindset. This is the new shape of life, at least for now. In many cities, handwritten notices hang on shop doors. Some announce new cash-only policies. Others explain temporary reduced hours. Many display small paper signs that say, "We are working things out as best as we can." Behind the counters, staff organize inventory by walking the aisles and counting items by hand. Delivery schedules are inconsistent, but the stores that remain open become local anchors. People visit them not only to buy food, but to check in on one another, to exchange news, and to hear the latest radio updates broadcast earlier in the morning. Radio becomes the steady heartbeat of society. Families gather around speakers to hear announcements about water, transport, and public services. National broadcasts give slow, measured updates about infrastructure. Local stations read out personal messages, the way they did generations ago. Notices about lost pets, community meetings, or the availability of fresh produce in a nearby market. Each announcement feels warm, human, and immediate, and people begin to trust this simple technology more than they expected to. In homes, a gentle reshuffling of life takes place. People stand in hallways, sorting piles of paper so they can keep track of bills and letters. Others pin calendars to walls and write their schedules down by hand. Children adapt quickly. They start doing homework on lined paper instead of typing on tablets. They draw diagrams, label maps, and revise with printed notes. Teachers become the central source of information again, not an online portal or homework app. Many workplaces have restructured by the end of the first month. Offices that relied entirely on cloud software remain closed or partially operating, with staff meeting in person to discuss changes and next steps. Other businesses have shifted to slower but functional paper-based systems. In some places, messengers carry documents between departments. Photocopiers run constantly, producing packets of forms, instructions, and records. In cities, traffic patterns change subtly. Without real-time navigation systems, commuters rely on memory, printed maps, or advice from friends. The most fast-moving roads are the ones people know well. Side streets fill with cautious drivers unfamiliar with the new routes they are forced to take. But surprisingly, the roads remain mostly calm. People drive slower. They make fewer trips. Evenings feel quieter, as if the world is taking a breath. Public transport continues to function, though more slowly. Train stations post handwritten timetables updated throughout the day by staff. Platforms feel different now. People read books or sit in silence instead of scrolling on screens. Conversations start more easily. Commuters recognize familiar faces and exchange small updates about delays or route changes. Planes still fly, but in reduced numbers. Airlines return to older scheduling methods. Pilots navigate using traditional charts and radio instructions. Airports feel more analog now whiteboards, radios, paper manifests. It takes longer to board and longer to land, but planes still cross the skies. Air travel becomes something people value more carefully, used only when necessary, not casually. Ships too adapt to life without networked navigation systems. Captains consult printed maps and rely on radio communication with ports. Cargo arrives slowly but steadily, though supply chains stretch into longer loops with unpredictable timing. Dock workers use clipboards and chalkboards to track incoming freight. Cranes move containers one at a time according to hand-sketched plans. Everything still functions, but at a pace the modern world is unaccustomed to. Meanwhile, communities strengthen. Town squares become information hubs where people post notices about lost property, car shares, trades, and local events. Community centers host bulletin boards filled with offers of help someone lending tools, someone teaching a skill, someone organizing a neighborhood watch. These small gestures begin to stitch people together in quiet, meaningful ways. Neighborhoods grow closer. People who once lived side by side without speaking now greet each other at fences, share news over garden walls, and trade fresh vegetables or baked bread. Children play outside more. Streets feel alive with conversation instead of the glow of screens. The absence of the internet reveals a softness in daily life that many did not know they missed. Libraries become vital again. People visit them not just to borrow books, but to read old encyclopedias, atlases and manuals that contain information once accessed instantly online. Study tables are full from morning to evening. Librarians walk through aisles helping people find answers the slow way through pages, indexes, and quiet patience. In the business world, some companies collapse altogether. Startups that relied entirely on digital services close their doors. Others survive by transforming completely, offering simplified, analog versions of their services. Courier companies hire more drivers to deliver handwritten messages within cities. Some entrepreneurs open storefronts that specialize in printed guides, maps, and physical media. Banks work tirelessly to rebuild paper-based systems. Staff manually update account records. People queue to withdraw limited amounts of cash. Transactions take longer. Branches that once handled thousands of digital operations a day now process a few hundred in person. Yet despite the slowdown, the financial world does not collapse. It adapts, step by meticulous step. Healthcare stabilizes further during the first month. Hospitals refine their manual processes. Nurses record vital signs with pen and paper. Doctors dictate notes that are transcribed by staff into physical files. Pharmacies manage stocks through daily manual counts. The pace is slower, but with each passing week, the systems grow more reliable. People put more trust in face-to-face conversations with their healthcare providers. Weather forecasting becomes more localized and less accurate without the internet's global data-sharing networks. Meteorologists rely on satellite images received through specialized non-internet channels. Forecasts take longer to compile and are communicated over radio and television. People look out of windows, study the clouds, and plan cautiously around changing skies. News becomes calmer and less overwhelming. Without instant alerts or endless feeds, stories travel slower. People hear about them through radio updates, printed newsletters, and conversations in cafes. The absence of the constant stream of information reduces anxiety for many. People feel more grounded, more present, more connected to the real world in front of them. Evenings transform. With screens no longer glowing in every room, families cook and eat together. They talk, read, play board games, or sit quietly with lamps casting warm pools of light on books. Some take up hobbies they had forgotten: drawing, knitting, writing, carpentry. Others spend more time outside, noticing sunsets and stars, hearing sounds of night animals they had not noticed in years. In many places, parks fill with people walking at dusk. There is a timelessness in the air, as if the world is remembering an older rhythm, slower, gentler, more human. Of course, the absence of the internet brings challenges too. Certain medical treatments that relied on remote databases become harder to manage. Businesses with global supply chains struggle to operate smoothly. Some communities feel isolated without access to digital communication. And in regions where the internet was crucial for education or public services, the transition is stressful and uneven. But humans are adaptable. Each obstacle is met with creativity. Radio networks expand their coverage. Postal services become vital again, delivering letters, documents, and even recorded audio messages on small cassette tapes in some areas. New local businesses appear, offering courier services by bicycle or van. The world does not fall apart, it simply changes direction. And beneath all this, something else begins to happen. Slowly and quietly, people start keeping journals again. They write down their thoughts, their daily routines, their hopes and worries. Without the distraction of constant digital noise, many find a deeper inner voice, a softer awareness of themselves and the world around them. Time feels different in the first month. Days stretch gently. Even busy places seem calmer. Noise levels drop in cities. Nights feel longer and darker, but also safer and more peaceful than many expected. There is a sense of collective effort, a shared experience that connects people across cultures and continents. By the fourth week, a new question begins floating through conversations, unspoken but felt everywhere. Is this the way life will be from now on? People do not know the answer yet. Governments are still investigating, still searching for explanations, still trying to restore even a fraction of the old network. Engineers work day and night, but the more they learn, the more they realize how deeply interconnected the failures were. And so, as the first month ends, humanity stands at the edge of a new era. Uncertain, but resilient. The world is quieter, slower, more tangible. The digital layer that once wrapped around everything is gone, and beneath it lies a planet rediscovering itself, its people, its rhythms, its old skills, its hidden strengths. The second month will bring new challenges, but it will also reveal unexpected forms of beauty, connection, and possibility. And soon, the story will carry us gently into the first year, where the long-term consequences and changes begin to bloom. As the month deepens, the world enters a new phase that feels less like an emergency and more like a long adjustment. The initial shock has faded, leaving behind a quieter, more reflective atmosphere. Yet beneath the calm, people carry a lingering sense of uncertainty, like a distant echo in the background of every day. Governments hold daily radio briefings. They explain what they know, which is less than people hoped for, and what they don't know, which is far more. Experts admit that the collapse of the global network was not a single-point failure, but a cascade spreading through thousands of interdependent systems. Each attempt to restore one component has been blocked by failures in others. It is like trying to rebuild a spider's web made of invisible threads while standing in the dark. The public listens carefully. Some cling to hope that things will return to normal soon. Others have stopped expecting recovery. A new phrase begins to appear in broadcasts, spoken softly, cautiously: long-term disruption. No one yet says permanent, but the meaning sits between the lines. In rural areas, life changes in different ways. Farmers rely more on traditional methods. Weather predictions are less accurate, but local observation fills the gap. Communities that already depended less on digital infrastructure adapt more smoothly. They have working rhythms that predate the internet, and these rhythms return naturally. Markets operate with cash. Tools are repaired rather than replaced. People rely on neighbors rather than apps. In cities, the noise level drops. Without online advertising, many digital billboards go dark, leaving long stretches of streets with softer lighting. Without constant streaming and downloading, power usage patterns shift. Some buildings dim their lights at night to conserve energy. Roads feel calmer, with fewer cars making unnecessary trips. Public squares fill with groups of people exchanging news, trading goods, or simply enjoying fresh air. A subtle cultural shift emerges. People begin to rediscover patience. Waiting becomes a normal part of life, again waiting in queues, waiting for mail, waiting for a train whose time is written in chalk. The world moves at a more human speed. Teachers notice something remarkable. Children concentrate more in class. Without digital distractions, lessons feel grounded and tangible. Students read from printed textbooks and discuss ideas face to face. Group projects involve building physical models, drawing diagrams, writing essays by hand. The classroom environment becomes quieter but more engaging, with fewer interruptions and a deeper sense of presence. Parents notice changes at home as well. Their children ask more questions, spend more time outdoors, and sleep earlier. Even adults start to feel subtle shifts in their routines. Without the pull of notifications, evenings stretch open like long, peaceful corridors. People read more. They talk more. They notice small details of lifebirds singing at dusk, the smell of evening rain, the warmth of lamplight on a table. Some turn to hobbies that had long been abandoned. A person dusts off a guitar and begins playing again. Someone else sets up an easel near a window and paints. A retired engineer begins teaching neighborhood children how to fix bicycles. A gardener grows vegetables in pots along a balcony that once held decorative plants. The absence of the digital world creates a space that people fill with older, quieter skills. Postal services expand rapidly to meet new demand. Mailboxes overflow with letters, printed newsletters, and handwritten notes. Penmanship becomes important again. People carefully craft messages, knowing they will take days to arrive. The art of writing returns not quickly typed messages, but thoughtful, physical communication. The emotional landscape changes too. Some people feel calmer and more grounded than they have in years. Others struggle with the loss of instant communication and the sudden distance between loved ones in other parts of the world. The postal system helps, but letters cannot match the ease of video calls or messaging apps. Families separated by distance must adjust to slower rhythms of connection. Businesses evolve as well. Some shops begin offering delivery services using bicycles or small vans, guided by hand-drawn maps. Repair shops flourish because items that once would have been replaced through online orders must now be fixed locally. Artists and craftspeople gain new relevance. Markets become hubs for handmade goods, tools, and essentials that were once ordered online without a second thought. In many places, community resilience grows. People form small groups to help one another, sharing food, tools, or labor. Neighborhood committees revive old traditions like monthly gatherings or local cleanups. People meet face-to-face to discuss problems, instead of posting about them on platforms that no longer exist. The absence of the digital layer brings a strange clarity to human interactions. Yet even in this peaceful adaptation, deep challenges remain. Scientific research slows dramatically without access to global data networks. Universities operate on local archives and printed journals. Medical facilities struggle to coordinate across regions. International trade suffers from inconsistent communication and delays. Some medicines take longer to arrive. Some do not arrive at all. The world does not collapse, but it becomes more local, more uneven, slower, and more dependent on physical proximity. Wealthy countries with large domestic industries adapt more smoothly. Smaller nations that depended on imports face greater challenges. International cooperation becomes harder without digital meeting rooms and instant correspondence. Governments rely heavily on radio networks to coordinate. Military and emergency services expand their radio infrastructure, creating new frequencies for civilian use. The sound of radio static, beeps, voices fading in and out becomes part of daily life. By the end of the first month, even the most optimistic people begin to sense something deeper. This is not temporary. This is not a glitch or an outage waiting for a fix. This is the beginning of something long-lasting, something that will shape the world for years to come. The digital age has ended not with a dramatic event, but with a quiet unraveling. And in the empty space it left behind, humanity is rediscovering parts of itself, its patience, its creativity, its resilience, and its deep capacity to adapt to whatever comes next. The first month comes to a close, like a curtain drawing gently across a stage. Behind it, the world stands in a new light wired, not by invisible signals, but by human connection, shared effort, and the simple strength of communities. Ahead lies the first full year, where temporary adjustments will solidify into long-term ways of living, and the true scale of the change will begin to unfold. The first year without the internet unfolds slowly, like a long winter easing into spring. It begins with uncertainty, with people hoping that some hidden team of engineers will find a miracle fix. But as the months pass, that hope softens into something quieter. Not despair, not resignation, but a gradual understanding that the world has entered a new chapter, one that will require new habits, new relationships, and new ways of solving problems. By the start of the second month, life has settled into a rhythm that feels both old and strangely new. The shock has worn off, and practicality has taken its place. People stop mentioning the outage as often. They stop expecting recovery. Their routines shift, and the new patterns become familiar. The workplace, once driven by constant digital activity, looks different now. Offices that depended on online systems restructure or close. Others adapt with remarkable creativity. Managers hold physical meetings in conference rooms where whiteboards and printed charts replace shared screens. Administrative staff maintain filing cabinets full of contracts and invoices. Couriers carry documents between buildings. The pace is slower, but the work feels tangible in a way many had forgotten. Some industries experience a renaissance. Printing companies become essential again. Postal services expand. Makers of stationery, Envelopes, labels, and filing supplies grew busier each month. Booksellers thrive as more people seek physical sources of information and entertainment. Map makers and guidebook publishers find their shelves emptying faster than they can restock. In many places, electricity remains stable, but the ways people use it change. Without card servers constantly syncing data, without endless video streaming or large-scale online computing loads, national power grids operate under much lighter strain. Energy use becomes smoother throughout the day. The absence of digital noise reduces the tiny fluctuations that once ran invisibly beneath the grid surface. Some communities experiment with new local renewable projects, micro-hydro generators in small rivers, rooftop solar cooperatives, wind installations built and maintained by local engineers. These projects were once coordinated digitally, but people quickly adapt, organizing by radio and face-to-face meetings. Without the distraction of online entertainment, many rediscover hands-on skills and find satisfaction in building something real and practical. Schools settle more deeply into their analog routines. Children learn multiplication on chalkboards, draw maps by hand, and collect leaves for science projects instead of browsing the internet for answers. Without online homework portals, teachers return to simpler methods of evaluation. They read essays printed on paper, assessed drawings and handwritten calculations, and hold longer discussions in class. The absence of screens improves focus. Students grow more imaginative. They learn to observe, to ask questions, and to think slowly and deeply instead of searching quickly and passively. University life changes even more dramatically. Research that once relied on global databases slows. Scholars travel between campuses, carrying printed papers, physical photographs, and carefully written notes. Conferences happen in person, with researchers gathering from around the world using slow transport networks and long-planned schedules. These meetings feel weighty and precious, infused with a sense of significance that the fast pace of online collaboration once diluted. The loss of global digital communication alters financial systems permanently. Banks reorganize into more localized institutions. They maintain paper ledgers, physical vaults, and manual verification procedures. Checks, once nearly obsolete, return. Some economies introduce new printed currencies to avoid reliance on digital records. Cash usage increases everywhere, not out of preference but necessity. A quiet but powerful shift unfolds in how people think about time. Without instant notifications or online calendars pinging them, people become more deliberate. They write schedules in notebooks. They plan ahead. They show up early. Commitments feel more meaningful because keeping them requires attention rather than automatic reminders. Social life changes too. Without social media networks, friendships become more local and more intentional. People host more gatherings at home. Neighbors organize potlucks and game nights. Book clubs form around borrowed novels. Birthday invitations arrive on paper instead of through online platforms. People talk more deeply, laugh more loudly, stay a little longer at the table. The absence of digital comparison reduces anxiety for many. They feel less pressure to perform, to update, to impress. Human connection becomes simpler and more honest. At night, cities glow a little dimmer. Many shops close earlier because manual processes take more time. Without the blue glow of millions of screens shining through windows, the sky looks darker and stars become easier to see. In many places, stargazing becomes a quiet pastime. Families sit on rooftop terraces or in back gardens, pointing out constellations that once competed with digital light. In the medical world, adaptation continues steadily. Hospitals refine paper-based systems. Clinics use local radio channels to coordinate emergency supplies. Pharmacies partner with delivery services to distribute essential medicines. Specialists hold more in-person consultations to make up for the loss of digital correspondence with distant colleagues. Some treatments take longer to coordinate, but healthcare never stops. The heart of medicine listening, examining, caring persists unchanged. The absence of the internet affects communication between distant family members most of all. Letters become lifelines. People wait eagerly at post boxes. The sound of the postal worker arriving becomes a highlight of each day. Some families exchange cassette tapes with recorded messages, speaking softly into small devices, the way people once left voicemails. These tapes travel across countries and continents, carrying laughter, stories, news, and affection. Global news shifts from instant to periodic. Radio broadcasts offer updates at set intervals. Newspapers print more pages to cover a slower, deeper understanding of events. People no longer scroll endlessly through headlines. Instead, they sit with a cup of tea, reading thoughtfully, absorbing information in a calm, measured way that soothes instead of overstimulates. Communities become more self-sufficient. Local councils organize workshops on gardening, repair skills, and first aid. People trade tools and knowledge. Markets grow larger as demand for local produce increases. In many places, community gardens appear in empty lots. People plant herbs, vegetables, and fruit trees to share with neighbors. Life becomes more tactile, grounded in the physical world rather than the digital one. Travel habits shift significantly. Without online booking systems, long-distance journeys require planning weeks or months in advance. Train stations use physical signs to display available seats. Travel agents, once fading into obscurity, return to importance. They maintain books of schedules, fares, and regional contacts. Their knowledge becomes valuable again. Airports run fewer flights, but they run them well. Pilots navigate with printed charts. Ground crews use whiteboards and radios. Boarding passes are written by hand. There is something nostalgic and charming in the slower pace, though it also means that people treat travel more seriously, often reserving it for truly important reasons. Throughout this first year, governments continue investigating the cause of the Internet's collapse. Teams of engineers analyze damaged network components, examine undersea cable segments, and attempt satellite resets. But each path leads to the same conclusion. The failure was total and interconnected, the digital equivalent of every nerve in a body failing at once. Repair is theoretically possible, but only on a scale so vast and complex that it may take decades, if it can be done at all. As this reality becomes clearer, society gradually shifts from temporary solutions to long-term redesign. New policies emerge supporting local communication networks, radio relays, community broadcasting stations, and new forms of wired communication that do not rely on the fragile complexity of the old internet. Cities build local information hubs where announcements are posted each morning. National radio updates become as normal as checking a clock. Life takes on rhythms that feel steady, predictable, and slower. Nature changes too during the first year. With fewer lights and reduced digital noise, some animals begin returning to areas they once avoided. Birds explore city parks more confidently. In rural areas, Night skies brighten with stars, drawing migrating species along ancient celestial paths. Noise pollution drops, making forests and coastlines quieter and more vibrant. People spend more time outdoors. Walking becomes a major form of transportation. Bicycles grow in popularity. Parks throughout cities and towns fill with families, walkers, and children who now play without screens pulling them indoors. The mental health of many subtly improves. With fewer distractions, brains settle. Stress levels ease. People sleep earlier and longer. Dreams become more vivid. Morning routines slow down. Even work feels different, quieter, more focused, less fractured by constant digital interruption. By the end of the first full year, humanity has not merely survived without the internet. It has changed. Not perfectly, not without loss, but with resilience and creativity. People have found new ways to connect, to work, to learn, and to care for each other. The world feels smaller physically, yet larger emotionally, filled with real voices, real gestures, real moments carried by hand instead of fiber and waves. As the first year draws to a close, the question that once floated quietly is this temporary, has shifted. It is no longer asked with anxiety or denial, but with curiosity. What might the next year bring? Ahead lies 5 years later, where adaptation becomes transformation, and the world begins truly shaping itself into a new era. 5 years after the collapse, the world has settled into a rhythm that no one could have imagined during the frantic first week. The absence of the internet has reshaped almost every aspect of human life, not with sudden changes, but through thousands of small adjustments, each one settling quietly into place like grains of sand forming a kame. New shoreline. The cities of the world still stand, and most of them are still busy and alive, but their tempo is different now. Without the constant glow of digital screens, the nights are darker and calmer. Without the endless ping of notifications, the days feel longer and more spacious. The world is quieter in ways that people have grown used to, less hurried, less fractured, less stretched thin by the demands of constant connection. In these 5 years, people have adapted so thoroughly to analog living that many younger children barely remember what the internet was like. They know the word and they have heard stories, but to them, it feels almost mythical an age when information flowed like water and screens glowed with moving images from around the world. When adults describe it, children listen the way past generations once listened to stories about steam trains or the early days of air travel. In many places, books have reclaimed their importance. Libraries are among the busiest public spaces. Shelves that once stood dusty now gleam with fresh editions, carefully catalogued by hand. Librarians have become some of the most respected figures in their communities, keepers of knowledge, guides to information, and gentle teachers of how to navigate the vastness of printed archives. People come to them with questions that once would have been typed into search engines. They answer with patience, pulling maps, journals, encyclopedias, and old papers from drawers and stacks. There is a sense of ceremony to it, a quiet respect for the slowness of seeking and finding. Education has transformed as well. Schools teach research skills that focus on observation, deduction, and asking elders or experts rather than clicking and scrolling. Children learn to build, to repair, to craft, to write with clarity, and to solve problems without relying on automated tools. They grow up with stronger handwriting, sharper memory, and deeper focus. They know how to fix a bicycle, mend clothing, plant seeds, adjust gears, bind books, and track weather patterns by watching the clouds. These practical skills have become woven into modern curricula, blending traditional knowledge with contemporary science. Universities have changed dramatically. Without online access to global journals, institutions rely on networks of physical exchange. Academics travel with suitcases full of copied papers and handwritten notes. Conferences take place in person, often lasting several weeks to allow researchers to share and copy entire sets of findings. Collaboration feels slower, but also more deliberate and meaningful. Knowledge moves through human hands and human conversations, rather than through invisible channels of light. Communication has become more precious. Letters remain the central form of long-distance contact. Many families keep wooden boxes filled with hand-addressed envelopes from loved ones' treasured archives of ink and paper. The arrival of the post each morning feels like a ritual. People gather by windows, listening for the quiet sound of the postal worker's footsteps, wondering if today will bring news from someone far away. For shorter distances, couriers thrive. Some are bicycle messengers weaving through city streets with satchels full of documents. Others ride small electric scooters charged from local microgrids carrying parcels and notebooks between neighborhoods. In rural areas, couriers use horses, small boats or motorbikes to travel between scattered homes. Communication is slower, but more intimate. People think carefully before writing, choosing words with intention. Everywhere, radios continue to be the backbone of public communication. Local stations broadcast news, weather, cultural programs, and educational segments. Children listen to science stories in the evenings. Adults tune in before dawn to hear updates on farming conditions or community announcements. Radios provide a sense of togetherness, a shared heartbeat echoing through towns and cities. Economies have undergone deep but stable transformation. Global trade continues, but with fewer moving parts and longer timelines. Ports operate by radio and paper manifests. Ships navigate with a combination of analog tools and simplified digital systems, designed to function independently of the old network. Goods move across oceans, but at a pace that feels more like the early 20th century than the early 21st. Local industries have flourished. Communities produce more of their own food, clothing, and tools. Craftspeople have returned to prominence: blacksmiths, carpenters, potters, tailors. Repair shops fill high streets that once housed digital gadget stores. Markets are vibrant, colorful places where people barter and exchange. The absence of hyper-globalized supply chains has strengthened local economies, making communities more resilient and self-reliant. Healthcare, though slowed by the loss of instant global communication, has stabilized into a dependable hybrid of modern medicine and analog organization. Hospitals maintain thick binders of medical records, updated daily by teams of clerks. Laboratories deliver results in person. Specialists travel more often to smaller towns, offering clinics on rotation. Medical knowledge moves through conferences, journals, and physical exchange networks. Progress is slower, but still steady. One of the most profound changes has occurred in people's relationship with nature. With less digital noise, fewer screens, and fewer distractions, people spend far more time outdoors. Parks have become central to community life. Forest paths are walked daily. Lakes and rivers are visited not just for recreation, but for contemplation, conversation, and quiet. Birdsong feels louder now. Wind in the trees feels more noticeable. People know the names of more plants, more stars, more insects. Nature has crept subtly into the space once occupied by the digital world. night skies have changed noticeably in 5 years. With fewer lights in windows, fewer illuminated billboards, and fewer electronic displays, the stars shine brighter. Astronomy has become a popular hobby. Families gather with simple telescopes. Amateur astronomers chart the movement of planets, sketch the phases of the moon, and teach neighborhood children how to identify constellations. The Milky Way is visible in more places than it has been in decades. Social life has grown deeper and slower. Without social media feeds, gatherings feel more meaningful. People celebrate birthdays with hand-made cards and long dinners. They share stories, not photos. Musicians perform in small venues, drawing crowds who come for the music itself rather than for online posts about it. Poetry readings, theatre groups, choirs, and local clubs flourish. Creative expression grows without the pressure of online metrics. 5 years without the internet has allowed mental space to expand. Many people feel calmer, less anxious, less overwhelmed by information. They sleep better. They dream more. They spend more time reading, walking, thinking, and simply being with the people around them. Conversations run deeper than they once did. Eye contact is easier. Listening is more present. Of course, the absence of the internet has brought challenges too. Scientific progress is slower. Emergency logistics require more coordination. Some remote communities feel isolated. Weather forecasting is less accurate. Elections are harder to coordinate. International decision-making takes far more time. Not every country has adapted equally well. Some regions face shortages. Others struggle with communication in rural areas. The world is not perfect, nor has it ever been, but it continues with resilience. Interestingly, a new generation of engineers has emerged, dedicated to building an entirely different kind of global network, one based on robust simplicity rather than fragile intricacy. They study analog communication, optical signaling, resilient mesh networks, and long-range radio systems. They experiment with systems that can be repaired with hand tools rather than specialized factories. Their work is slow, steady, and hopeful. They believe that connection is a human instinct, and that a new kind of connectivity may someday rise from the foundations of the old, built stronger and wiser. 5 years later, the internet has become a memory still talked about, still studied, still missed in some ways, but no longer essential. Humanity has not collapsed without it. Instead, it has rediscovered something ancient and enduring: the capacity to adapt, to create, to rebuild, and to find meaning in connection that does not require wires or signals. People greet each other in the street now. They know their neighbors' names. They write letters filled with warmth. They gather around radios at night. They watch sunsets without glancing at screens. They see stars that were hidden for decades. The world feels smaller, slower, gentler. Not better in every way, but more human in many ways. And as this 5-year chapter closes, the story pulls us ever onward, drifting toward the vast horizon of time, where 50 years later, a very different world awaits older, wiser, shaped by decades of living in the absence of the digital web that once wrapped around the planet. 50 years pass, and the world that once lived beneath a shimmering lattice of digital signals now feels like a distant, almost mythical memory. The people alive today know of the internet mostly from stories told by their parents or grandparents, spoken with a strange mix of nostalgia, disbelief, and gentle amusement. To them, the idea of holding a tiny glowing device capable of connecting instantly across oceans sounds like something from a dream or a fairy tale about a forgotten age of light. The planet in this era is quieter, slower, and more rooted in physical reality. Cities still rise with towers and endless streets, but they do not pulse with the same frantic energy they once did. Their pace has softened, like an old song played at half speed, rich and warm and unhurried. The change is visible everywhere, on rooftops filled with gardens, on tree-lined avenues where bicycles drift like silent birds, and in the thick community markets that serve as the social heartbeats of most towns. A person walking through a 50-year-later city would feel a familiar world reshaped by time and gentle adaptation. The air is clearer. The sky is darker at night, blooming with stars. The streets smell more of earth and food and growing things, less of exhaust and neon. And the rhythms of life feel deeply human, marked not by pings and alerts, but by footsteps, conversations, and the turning of seasons. Entire generations have now grown up without the internet. They have never seen a search bar. They have never scrolled through photographs of faraway places. They have never lived in a world where a person's attention was constantly pulled by invisible threads. Their knowledge comes from teachers, mentors, books, observation, and the slow, rich process of learning directly from others. Their memories are anchored in real experiences, not in digital archives. These young people grow up with an ease of presence that earlier generations sometimes find astonishing. They are comfortable with silence. They are unbothered by waiting. They know how to entertain themselves with conversation, music, games, crafts, or wandering walks. Their sense of time is less fractured, less pressured, less divided into 1,000 micro-moments. In many places, education has become a deeply communal activity. Schools are hubs not just for children, but for entire neighborhoods. In the evenings, adults attend classes on farming, mechanics, astronomy, botany, or local history. Teachers hold workshops in libraries or open courtyards. Learning feels like a lifelong journey, not a race to gather credentials. Universities, too, remain important, but they have changed their shape. Instead of being global centers linked by digital networks, they operate as powerful local pillars of knowledge, connected to other institutions through slow but meaningful exchanges. Scholars travel physically, staying for months or years in different places to share research. Their work is carried in leather-bound journals, carefully copied and distributed by hand, preserving discoveries the way past generations preserved sacred texts. In this 50-year landscape, technology has not disappeared. Instead, it has evolved into forms that are resilient, repairable, and deeply integrated with the natural rhythms of society. Engineers have created robust communication systems based on long-range radio, optical signaling, and simple decentralized networks, but do not depend on fragile global infrastructure. These systems do not replicate the old internet. They are smaller, slower, but far more durable. Communities use local knowledge boards, tall structures in public squares covered with wooden frames and paper sheets. New announcements are posted each morning. Job openings, harvest forecasts, travel schedules, important research discoveries, local events, births, weddings, and memorials. People gather around these boards, chatting softly as they read, sharing insights and stories. Information moves through the world like a gentle river, slow but steady, clear but not overwhelming. Economies have stabilized into a patchwork of local and regional systems. Some countries still trade internationally through ports and long-distance shipping lanes, but the majority of daily commerce happens within reachable distances. Markets brim with local produce, handmade tools, pottery, woodwork, textiles, and books. Crafts that nearly disappeared in the age of mass manufacturing have returned with remarkable vitality. Blacksmithing, weaving, carpentry, glassmaking, shoemaking, paper crafts, herbal medicine. In many cities, communal workshops have become essential. These spaces, part library, part repair shop, part classroom, allow people to share equipment and skills. A carpenter might teach a teenager how to mend a chair. A mechanic might help a neighbor fix a bicycle. A teacher might show a small group how to bind books or stitch clothing. Knowledge spreads horizontally, slowly but powerfully, binding communities together across generations. Architecture has followed the same path, less sleek, more grounded. Buildings use local materials, designed for durability rather than novelty. Rooftops host gardens. Courtyards fill with vines and fruit trees. Homes open onto shared spaces where neighbors gather, cook, and talk beneath warm lamplight. The city breathes with natural textures: wood, clay, stone, woven fabrics. Travel, too, has its own rhythm. People still journey across continents, but even long trips feel intentional and grounded. Trains run on sturdy, well-maintained lines. Stations are busy but not chaotic, full of people carrying leather cases, cloth bags, and bundles of wrapped paper. Ships cross oceans along predictable routes, navigating with a combination of traditional tools and carefully built analog instruments. Travelers read, write, sketch, and watch the changing landscapes with quiet wonder. Air travel still exists, but it is slower, more methodical, and less frequent than in the days of instant booking and dense scheduling. Pilots rely on maps, compasses, and voice communication. Airports look simpler: chalkboards listing flights, uniformed staff guiding passengers, families gathering at gates with letters and parcels. The world has adapted not by racing forward, but by sinking deeper into its own foundations. Healthcare remains advanced, though different in its approach. With slower diagnostics and limited cross-border coordination, prevention and community health have become central. Clinics teach nutrition, exercise, and local medicine. Elders share herbal knowledge. Doctors run workshops in school halls. The emphasis is on resilient strengthening the body and mind long before illness arrives. Hospitals retain complex equipment, but they maintain it with painstaking care, guided by engineers trained to repair machines without relying on software patches or digital assistance. Science continues, but it is slower and more deliberate. Research groups maintain intricate handwritten ledgers. Experiments are documented in thick notebooks with dates carefully inscribed. Knowledge travels through conferences, handwritten letters, and printed journals carried by couriers and ships. Paradoxically, this slower pace produces deeper work, more thoughtful, more collaborative, less pressured by the frenzy of publishing. When discoveries spread, they do so with a sense of weight and wonder. Perhaps the most profound change over 50 years is in the fabric of relationships. People know their neighbors. They know their shopkeepers, their teachers, their local farmers, the elders who sit on corner benches telling stories. They know the seasons intimately, the exact weeks when certain flowers bloom, when the air grows warm, when the night sky shifts. They recognize the sounds of their town, the baker opening shutters at dawn, the bell from the schoolhouse, the soft hum of a morning train. Children grow up with a sense of belonging that earlier generations longed for. They learn from adults not only in classrooms, but in fields, workshops, kitchens, and forests. They speak with elders more. They listen to stories passed down orally, legends, histories, practical wisdom. They feel connected to the places they come from. Yet the world is not simpler or easier. It is just different. Decisions take longer. Travel requires patience. Businesses must plan months ahead. Communities must cooperate closely. Crises, storms, droughts, political shifts demand more human coordination and less digital scaffolding. But people have grown strong in these skills. They speak face to face. They write clearly. They think together. 50 years later, the planet feels gentler, more deliberate, and more rooted in the physical world. People miss certain instant connection, easy access to distant loved ones, immediate answers to questions. But they have gained depth in return, a sense of presence, a sense of groundedness, a sense of seeing each moment, each conversation, each sunrise with new appreciation. In many homes, older people still keep boxes of old devices, tablets, phones, laptops that once held the world inside them. They show them to grandchildren as curiosities, the way earlier generations once displayed vinyl records or typewriters. Children run their fingers across the blank black screens, unable to imagine a world where such rectangles once glowed with endless stories. The internet is no longer part of daily life. It is part of human history, something remarkable, something fragile, something that taught the world how connected it could be, and then taught the world how strong it could become without it. And now, as the slow decades turn, the story carries us toward a horizon beyond even this, into the deep future, where entire generations have lived and died in a world rebuilt from the foundations of shared time, shared labor, and shared human connection. 100 years pass, then 200, then 3. And slowly, the world moves so far beyond the age of the internet that its existence becomes a quiet footnote in history, an era spoken of with reverence and curiosity, the way ancient civilizations were once studied through fragments and ruins. The deep future is not a single moment, but a long unfolding, a tapestry of centuries, where new generations live entirely within the rhythms of an analog world, rebuilt from patience, craft, and shared knowledge. By now, the collapse of the internet is no longer remembered as a crisis, but as a turning point, a shift in the story of humanity, a place where one chapter closed and another opened. The deep future world is peaceful, methodical, and deeply intertwined with nature. Cities remain, but they have changed shape. Buildings are covered in greenery, with vines and flowers climbing their walls, and rooftop gardens overflowing with vegetables, herbs, and fruit trees. People gather on terraces to share meals grown only a few feet from where they eat. Water runs through engineered channels that double as habitats for birds and insects. Streets are quieter, traveled mostly by bicycles, light trams, and small electric carts powered by local microgrids. The fast, bright pace of the digital age has long melted into memory. In its place is a culture shaped by slowness, patience, and deep attention. People know how to do things with their hands, how to sew, carve, draw, repair, plant, and build. Knowledge is passed down through apprenticeships, through teachers, through elders who sit beneath old trees telling stories woven with the wisdom of centuries. Communication, though slower than in the digital age, feels richer and more meaningful. Messages travel along vast networks of couriers on foot, on bicycles, on horse, on small sailboats and gliding river barges. Communities maintain tall wooden message towers at the edge of towns where couriers can leave bundles of letters sorted into slots labeled by family names or local districts. Each tower is a hive of quiet movement filled with the rustle of paper, the murmur of voices, the soft creak of wooden beams as people come and go. Long-distance communication exists as well, not through screens, but through a vast system of relay stations that transmit coded light signals at night and bright flag signals during the day. These stations sit on mountaintops and tall ridges, forming chains of sightlines that stretch across continents. Skilled operators read and send signals through patterns of flashes or movements, turning human eyes and hands into the backbone of a resilient global network. Messages can cross a continent in a day, light passing from tower to tower like a heartbeat. Libraries remain sacred spaces. They are built with thick stone walls, long wooden tables, and towering shelves full of carefully bound volumes. Scribes and printers work constantly, updating records, copying scientific papers, and preserving old texts that have survived the centuries. The most treasured libraries preserve two kinds of knowledge: the collected wisdom of the analog world and the fragile, mysterious remnants of the digital age old screens, circuit boards, and fragments of code and brass, printed out like ancient glyphs. People study these remnants the way archaeologists once studied clay tablets. They know that once, long ago, humanity spoke through wires and invisible waves, sharing thoughts at the speed of light. But the technology to rebuild that world is gone, and the knowledge to restore it is scattered, incomplete, too dependent on a web of interlocking systems that no longer exist. Instead, scholars explore the philosophical lessons of the digital age's incredible power, its fragility, and the ways it shaped human behavior. Some communities keep small memory vaults, rooms filled with preserved devices that once connected billions of people. Children peer at them with wide eyes, touching their smooth glass surfaces, listening as elders describe how these objects once glowed with images and voices from every corner of the globe. The children laugh in disbelief, unable to imagine a world where people stared at these rectangles for hours each day. They ask questions. What did it feel like? Did it make people happy? Why did it disappear? And the answers come slowly, thoughtfully, from voices remembering a distant world that feels more like a dream than a reality. Art has transformed in the deep future. Without the internet's flood of images, creativity has grown inward and local. Painters work with pigments made from earth and plants. Musicians compose using traditional instruments mixed with new ones invented in workshops and academies. Writers craft long poems and epics copied by hand in illuminated manuscripts. Theatre and storytelling have returned to the center of cultural life. People gather in amphitheaters, in candlelit halls, in forest clearings, to listen to tales acted out with emotion and craft. These performances bind communities together, creating shared memories that last for decades. Science, too, has found its balance. Without instant global collaboration, research moves more slowly, but it also moves more deeply. Observatories track the stars with carefully engineered mechanical instruments. Physicists build intricate models of reality with chalk, paper, and handmade apparatus. Biologists map ecosystems through decades-long fieldwork, documenting species with meticulous drawings. Medical knowledge grows through a combination of traditional methods and new innovations, each one tested through thoughtful experimentation shared among networks of hospitals and clinics. In many regions, agriculture has become a refined, elegant science. People understand soil intimately, its chemistry, its seasons, its cycles. They cultivate crops in ways that nurture biodiversity. Fields are designed as mosaics of colors and textures, interwoven with pollinator gardens, water channels, and orchards. Farmers are both scientists and artists, guiding ecosystems instead of exploiting them. The deep future world is not utopian, nor is it free of challenge. Droughts, storms, and natural disasters still occur. Political disagreements still shape regions. Some communities remain isolated, and travel to distant lands still requires courage and time. Yet the overall shape of society is stable, resilient, and profoundly grounded in cooperation. The rhythms of life are slower but more deliberate. People know their neighbors, their landscapes, their history, and their responsibilities to one another. Children in the deep future grow up with a sense of continuity. They learn to plant seeds in spring, to harvest in autumn, to recognize constellations that have guided human eyes for thousands of years. They sit at the feet of elders who tell stories of centuries past of the age of electricity, the age of networks, the age of collapse, and the age of rebuilding. These stories remind them that humanity has lived many lives, each shaped by the tools it carried, and each capable of rising from loss into something new. Travel across continents in this future is an act of wonder. Journeys take weeks or months, but they are filled with beauty. Travelers cross forests filled with birdsong, follow ancient stone roads winding through valleys, sail along coastlines guided by stars and landmarks. Along the way, they stay in guest houses built from local timber, eat meals made from local harvests, and exchange stories with strangers who greet them like old friends. The absence of the internet has not diminished humanity's desire to connect. It has only reshaped, it slowed it, deepened it, made it gentler and more personal. People still seek knowledge. They still seek meaning. They still seek one another. But they do so through touch, voice, movement, and memory, rather than through screens and signals. And far, far in the future, when someone asks, "What was the internet?" the answer comes like a soft breeze. It was a network of light that once wrapped around the world. It made life fast and bright, but also restless. And when it faded, humans learned to breathe again. The deep future is a world built not on immediacy, but on presence. Not on acceleration, but on balance. A world that remembers the past with affection, but walks forward with steady feet, carrying lessons from both the digital age and the long, rich history that came before it. The story now drifts gently toward its final chapter, the closing descent, where we return to the present moment, inviting the listener toward rest, softness, and sleep. In the far reaches of this future age, centuries after the global network dissolved, humanity has grown into a civilization that understands time differently. Progress is still progress, but it moves like a river in winter slow, deep, steady, wearing new paths into the landscape, not through speed, but through patience. People alive in this era do not measure life in the frantic units of seconds and notifications. Instead, they measure time in the growth of trees, the passage of seasons, the slow expansion of knowledge through human hands. They understand that the world does not need to run quickly to be full, and that slowness is not a weakness, but a kind of wisdom. Whole generations have grown up learning from the land as much as from books. They know how rain feels on soil, how wind changes before a storm, how animals behave when the seasons shift. Cities are designed around these rhythms. Their architecture doesn't fight the natural world, it bends with it. Homes curve to catch breezes. Streets widen where the wind naturally funnels. Skylights are positioned to bring in dawn light just as it rises over distant hills. Walking through a deep future city feels like moving through a garden that has grown itself. Buildings lean subtly, as if nodding in agreement with the earth. Water channels run through plazas, feeding fish ponds, irrigation lines, and cooling pools, where children splash their hands on warm evenings. At night, soft lamp glow drifts from windows, pale gold like captured starlight. Humans long ago reclaimed certain arts of quiet. They sit together in public squares listening to storytellers who recount histories stretching back centuries. Some stories are factual, some mythic, but all are delivered with slow, patient cadence. There is no need to rush stories, live in the breath between sentences, in the glances shared between listeners, in the space created when a storyteller lifts their eyes to the night sky and smiles before continuing. Scientific disciplines have evolved uniquely. Astronomy, which once relied on instant data streams, now blends ancient stargazing techniques with modern hand-built instruments. Observatories are polished wooden structures, crowned with bronze-domed roofs that slide open to reveal the glittering sky. Astronomers track planets, comets, and distant stars using pendulums, mechanical clocks, and carefully mapped celestial charts updated over decades. In biology, researchers spend lifetimes studying ecosystems in slow detail. A scientist may devote 30 years to a single species of moss, documenting how it spreads across stone in varying climates. Another may study a single forest for an entire career, charting the rise and fall of populations as if writing a biography of the land itself. Their findings are taught to students in open-air classrooms, where wind rustles the pages of hand-copied textbooks. Medicine in the deep future is defined by two pillars: precision craftsmanship and deep preventative wisdom. Surgeons are artisans, trained for decades, their skills passed from master to apprentice in long, careful arcs. Herbalists and physicians work together, blending modern chemistry with generational plant knowledge. Clinics smell of fresh leaves, dried bark, clean cloth, and polished wood. Patients are known personally by their doctors, not through records on screens, but through memories, friendships, and years of conversation. At night, in towns and villages, people gather around fire pits or under starlit canopies to share music. Instruments are handmade wooden flutes carved from river reeds, deep drums stretched with animal hide, stringed instruments with warm, resonant tones. Children dance in the glow of lanterns. Elders sway gently, humming melodies learned from their grandparents and their grandparents before them. These songs travel slowly, carried across regions by wandering musicians who trade melodies for stories. Travel itself retains a magical quality. Long journeys are undertakings of patience, but they are filled with companionship. Caravans wind along forest paths, following routes marked by carved stones and flowering trees. Riders on horseback cross open plains guided by constellations. Sailboats glide across lakes and seas, their lanterns mirrored in dark water. Travelers bring news from distant places, slow, deliberate, but rich with detail and sincerity. When they return home weeks or months later, entire communities greet them with open arms, eager to hear their tales. Much of humanity's resilience in this future comes from its ability to decentralize. Rather than relying on any single fragile system, knowledge is spread across many hands. Every town has teachers, healers, artisans, astronomers, and planners. Every village knows how to repair tools, grow food, clean water, and build homes. There are no vast information monopolies or towering digital hierarchies. Knowledge is shared horizontally. Wisdom is passed down like seeds gently, carefully, across generations. And because the world has learned to slow down, people experience joy in small, intimate gestures. A freshly baked loaf of bread, a letter arriving on horseback, a new child's birth celebrated with songs, a neighbor leaving a basket of early peaches by someone's door. These moments are markers of time as meaningful as any holiday or ceremony. Though humanity has lost the internet, it has gained something quieter and perhaps more profound: a deep trust in community, a reverence for time, and a gentleness with the world. Elders tell stories of the digital age as if recalling a river that once flowed too quickly, overflowing its banks, dazzling everyone with its bright reflections. Younger listeners imagine it, but they cannot feel the frantic pulse of notifications or the endless scroll of information. To them, it is like listening to myths of dragons, or ancient machines remarkable, wondrous, but also distant and unreal. They live in a world where attention is undivided, where conversations are full and present, where silence is comfortable, where rest is natural, where community is not an app, but a circle of faces illuminated by lamplight. And now, in this deep future, as the sky turns dark blue and stars reveal themselves one by one, the world feels cradled in a timeless calm. Somewhere, a child closes a wooden shutter. Somewhere else, an elder blows out a candle. In another place entirely, a letter is sealed with wax and placed in a courier's bag for a journey that will last many days. The world breathes softly, and humanity breathes with it. This is the world that grew from silence, a world that learned to listen again. Generations rise and fall, and as the centuries unfold, the memory of the internet becomes softer, quieter, and more abstract. The people of the deep future look back at that time not with a sense of loss or longing, but with curiosity, like historians studying a vanished river that once shaped a valley and then slowly dried away, leaving fertile soil behind. In the villages, towns, and cities of this future world, stories about the digital age are kept alive the same way old myths once were, through storytelling circles, through carefully copied records, and through elders who carry foi, the spark of memory. They speak of the great network, a web of invisible light that once wrapped around the earth, connecting billions of people instantly. Children listen with bright eyes, imagining an age when thoughts traveled at the speed of lightning, when voices crossed oceans in a heartbeat, when images and ideas flickered across small, glowing rectangles held in human hands. But even as they listen, the children cannot fully imagine it. Their minds are molded by the slowness of their own world, the rhythm of footsteps on cobblestone paths, the creak of wooden carts, the quiet hum of hand-built machines powered by sun or wind. They understand connection, but they understand it through letters, through long conversations, through shared work, through songs sung in the same room. Instantaneous communication is a marvel that feels unreal to them, like tales of talking animals or enchanted mirrors. Some communities dedicate entire houses to the study of the digital age. These archival homes contain physical devices preserved as relics: old screens, keyboards, circuit boards, cracked smartphones resting like fossils beneath layers of time. Scholars study them with the same reverence archaeologists once studied ancient pottery shards, piecing together how these objects worked, how they felt, how they shaped the world. They learned that the internet was fragile, dependent on a delicate balance of satellites, cables, languages of code, vast data centers, and millions of interconnected parts. They learned that a failure in one region could cascade across continents. They learned that the world once lived in a constant stream of information updates, alerts, images, messages AU fast, that people struggled to keep up with the pace of their own lives. But what fascinates them most is not the technology itself, but the way it shaped minds. They read old letters and diaries from the early 21st century describing the feeling of always being reachable, always connected, always just one buzz or notification away from being pulled out of the present moment. They study psychological papers from the era, written by researchers who were beginning to understand how constant stimulation shaped the brain. They learn of distraction, comparison, digital fatigue, loneliness that grew despite endless connectivity. And then, scholars compare those findings with their present world, where slowness is the norm, where people listen more deeply, where memory is stronger, where conversations are longer, where presence is easier. These comparisons become lessons studied by young thinkers and philosophers who seek to understand not just how to build tools, but how to build tools that honor the human spirit. In this era, wisdom is not measured by how quickly one responds, but by how deeply one thinks. Not by how much one consumes, but by how much one understands. Not by how many people one can reach, but by how meaningfully one can touch the lives of those nearby. Communities form their own local knowledge traditions. Some towns become known for astronomy, with observatories perched on rocky cliffs. Others are known for medicine, passing down herbal wisdom and surgical skill across generations. Others specialize in navigation, teaching children the language of stars and coastlines. Each community becomes a small galaxy of expertise, linked not by wires but by journeys, letters, and visiting scholars who carry ideas like seeds. It is not a world without challenges. Droughts still come. Storms still rise. Borders still shift. Some regions grow isolated, others grow crowded. And yet, people approach these challenges differently than before. Without the frantic pace of the old world, planning becomes longer term. Debates are slower, calmer, more respectful. Decisions are made by councils who take days, weeks, or months to listen, reflect, and deliberate. Political systems evolve too. Some regions adopt rotating councils where every adult serves for a season. Others maintain libraries of public wisdom compilations of decisions, mistakes, successes, and lessons learned over centuries. Laws change slowly, but with care. Leaders are not chosen for charisma or speed, but for clarity of thought, calm temperament, and the ability to listen with sincerity. Across continents, trade networks stretch like long, steady threads. Caravans move between cities with goods crafted by skilled hands, finely made tools, pottery glazed in rich colors, woven fabrics dyed with pigments from flowers and soil, bound volumes of research or poetry. These caravans become moving hubs of culture. They carry songs, stories, news, traditions. They return home with new recipes, new techniques, new ways of thinking. Travel itself becomes a bridge of ideas, a slow-moving river of cultural exchange. Maritime routes flourish too. Large ships, powered by wind and ingenious analog engines, glide along predictable ocean paths. Their captains understand currents the way earlier generations understood code. Their crews navigate using star charts that have been copied and refined across centuries. They bring spices, minerals, crafted goods, medicinal plants, and knowledge of far-off lands. But beyond all these practical changes, perhaps the deepest transformation happens within the human mind. Over centuries, people come to understand themselves not as users of a network, but as participants in a shared world, an ecosystem of minds, relationships, communities, seasons, and landscapes. Without the constant pull of digital attention, their inner worlds deepen. Their emotional lives become richer, less fragmented. Their dreams grow more vivid. People in this far future speak often of the quiet hours, the time each evening when the world settles into calm. Lamps glow behind shuttered windows. Families gather around tables. Elders tell stories. Musicians play. Children curl up beside parents, listening to tales of the past. These quiet hours become sacred, a daily ritual of connection and rest. And in these hours, the stories of the digital age are sometimes told, stories of the devices that woke people with alerts, stories of glowing screens that shaped entire cultures, stories of a world that once moved too fast. For its own breath, listeners do not judge that world. They simply breathe it in as history, understanding that it was another chapter in the long narrative of humanity, a chapter filled with wonder, complexity, brilliance, and fragility. A chapter that taught future generations about balance, about the value of presence, about the beauty of slowness. Humanity, in its deep future, has become a species that remembers its past but does not repeat it blindly. It has learned how to shape tools that honor the pace of life. It has learned that no technology should run faster than the human heart can follow. It has learned that connection is not something measured in speed, but in sincerity. On warm evenings, you might see a group of children sitting on a grassy hill, watching the stars appear slowly above them. An elder might point to the Milky Way and explain how ancient navigators once steered ships by its glow. Another might point to a dark, quiet place in the sky and say softly, "Long ago, light traveled through the air. Two messages, images, ideas. They shimmered across the world like fireflies." The children listen, imagining a sky filled not with stars, but with signals. And then they look back to the real sky-vast, quiet, infinite, and feel at peace. The old world is not forgotten. It is understood. It is respected. It is part of the long human story. But the new world grows in its own gentle direction, shaped by the wisdom of time. And now, as we drift toward the final descent of this story, you are invited to feel that same softness, that same slow settling, that same gentle release. The final chapter will not bring new ideas or grand changes. It will simply bring you home to calm, to rest, to the quiet hum of your own breath. And now, after wandering through centuries of imagined history and human adaptation, we begin to return slowly, gently, to this moment here with you. The story has carried you far from the present world, through quiet futures and soft landscapes, and now it eases you back step by step, breath by breath toward rest. You do not need to hold everything we explored. You do not need to remember the early chaos, the slow rebuilding, the centuries of reflection. You can simply let the weight of the journey soften inside you. Take a breath in, slowly, and let it drift out, gently. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of all these timelines, as though you have been walking along a long, winding path that stretches through the ages. Behind you lies everything we explored: the dimming of screens, the return of letters and lanterns, the slow wisdom of future communities. But ahead of you is something simpler, quieter, closer. The sound of your own breathing, the heaviness of your body, the safety of your bed. The air around you grows warmer as you walk forward. The light grows dimmer. The path beneath your feet becomes softer, smoother, easier to follow. You take another breath, and with each exhale, the world becomes a little quieter. Somewhere behind you, the background hum of the story fades like distant music. Somewhere far ahead, rest is waiting, patient and calm. And here, in the middle, you are drifting slowly, peacefully, in a space where nothing is expected of you. Imagine yourself stepping into a quiet room. The door closes softly behind you. The air is still and gentle, like a warm evening after rain. A small lamp glows in the corner, casting golden shapes along the walls. There is a bed nearby, covered with soft blankets, and a pillow that seems to rise slightly, inviting you to lie down. Outside the window, you can hear a faint breeze, a whisper of leaves moving in the night. You walk slowly to the bed and sit down on its edge. The blanket shifts beneath you, and the mattress feels warm, as though it has been waiting just for you. You lie back, sinking into the softness. Your head comes to rest on the pillow. Your hands relax by your sides. Your breathing becomes deep and slow. The world feels far away now. Everything that has happened today, everything that is waiting for you tomorrow, it all steps back for a moment, giving you space to rest. You do not need to plan. You do not need to analyze. You do not need to hold on to anything. Your body knows what to do. Your mind knows how to let go. Imagine a warm breeze drifting through the room, brushing lightly across your forehead, your cheeks, your shoulders. Each time it passes, a little more tension leaves your muscles. Your jaw softens. Your neck releases. Your arms grow heavier, sinking deeper into the bed. You can picture small dust motes floating lazily in the lamplight. They turn and drift like tiny stars moving in slow motion. Everything in the room moves at a soft, dreamlike pace. The window is cracked open just enough for night air to flow in. You hear the distant sound of wind passing through leaves. Maybe you hear a soft hum from outside a lone cricket, the rustle of a branch, a faraway voice drifting home late at night. These sounds are gentle, comforting, like familiar footsteps on a quiet street. Inside, the room feels still, warm, safe. Your breathing becomes even slower now. In, pause, and out, you can feel your ribs rise and fall in a calm rhythm, like waves brushing the shore. You can feel your eyelids growing heavier, the way petals close at the end of a long day. And you can feel your thoughts turning softer, rounder, drifting like clouds in a twilight sky. If any thoughts come to you, let them drift right past. If any memories rise up, let them fade gently into the distance. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to fix anything. You do not need to hold onto a single idea. Imagine a gentle curtain of quiet falling over your mind. Imagine the story becoming a soft glow far in the distance. Imagine your body sinking deeper into comfort, like a stone settling slowly into warm sand. There is a sense now, inside you, that rest is close. That sleep is already standing at your bedside, patient and kind. That dreams are beginning to gather on the horizon of your thoughts, shimmering softly. You are safe. You are warm. You are allowed to let go. Let your breath guide you downward. Let your muscles grow heavier. Let your mind become featherlight, drifting, floating, unwinding. The day is over now. You have traveled far. And you are exactly where you need to be. As you lie here now, breathing slowly and evenly, the last threads of the story begin to dissolve gently into the quiet around you. The world of imagination we walked through together, the peaceful futures, the calm communities. The soft lantern-lit nights fades into a warm glow, like the final embers of a fire settling into ash. There is nothing left you need to follow, nothing left to explore. You have reached the resting shore of this journey. Let your body feel supported in every place it touches the bed. Your back, your shoulders, the weight of your legs, the softness beneath your head. Everything is held. Everything is supported. Everything is safe. Imagine now that the entire story, from beginning to end, is gathered into a small, flickering lantern. Not to be analyzed, not to be remembered, not to be carried, just gently glowing, softly warming the air around you. You do not need to hold the lantern. You only need to let it glow quietly somewhere nearby. You can feel your mind loosening its grip on the day. Feel your thoughts softening, widening, drifting. No sharp edges, no pressure, no demands. Just warmth, just stillness, just rest. Picture yourself lying beneath a wide sky at dusk. The world is quiet. The air is cool and calm. Above you, the clouds drift slowly, turning from gold to pale lavender, then to deep blue. The stars brighten one by one, gentle and patient. You breathe in, and the air feels like the first cool breeze of evening. You breathe out, and it feels like releasing an old tension, a tiny weight you no longer need to carry. Somewhere nearby, a quiet stream murmurs past, moving at the slowest, most peaceful pace. You hear it trickle and swirl, the way thoughts begin to swirl as you drift towards sleep, soft, rhythmic, soothing. Your eyelids feel heavier with each passing second. Your arms settle. Your legs release. Your chest rises and falls in a calm, steady rhythm, just like the rhythm of that quiet water. Everything in your body is slowing. Everything in your mind is softening. Imagine now, in this quiet landscape, a small wooden house at the edge of a forest. Its windows glow with warm candlelight. Inside, a bed, waits simple, soft, perfectly made for rest. You walk toward it slowly, your steps light on the grass, your breath deep and easy. When you reach the door, you push it open. Warm air surrounds you. It smells faintly of cedar and linen. The light flickers gently across the floor. You lie down on the bed. The blankets fall softly around you. The pillow shapes itself beneath your head. And for a moment, there is nothing, not thought, not effort, not tension, just the quiet awareness of your breath. The candlelight dims a little. The breeze becomes softer. The world grows quieter. And your body grows heavier. If thoughts come now, they drift like feathers on a breeze, weightless and slow. They do not disturb you. They simply float by and fade into the soft distance. You feel the muscles in your face relaxing. Your jaw unclenches. Your shoulders drop just a little more. Your hands loosen their hold on the day. Your breath becomes the gentlest whisper, barely noticeable, like the rustle of leaves outside the window. Imagine Imagine the darkness around you thickening into a soft blanket, warm, welcoming, peaceful. It wraps gently around you, supporting your whole body. You are held in a space that asks nothing of you except to rest. Your mind is drifting now, not thinking, not worrying, just drifting like a small boat rocking slowly on calm water at dusk. Each breath carries you deeper. Each exhale releases more of the day. Each soft pause brings you closer to sleep. You can hear the night settling around you, the distant hush of wind, the softest creak of the wooden house, the gentle pulse of your own heartbeat in your ears, steady, quiet, comforting. You have reached the end of the story. And now, all that remains is rest. Let yourself sink deeper into the bed. Let your thoughts fade into warm shadows. Let your breath continue at its own slow pace. You are safe. You are warm. You are allowed to let go. If sleep is not here yet, it is close, hovering just beyond the edge of your awareness, ready to gather you in its arms the moment you stop trying to reach for it. There is nothing more you need to follow. Nothing more you need to imagine. Nothing more you need to do. Just feel the soft weight of your eyelids. Feel the warmth along your back. Feel the stillness in your hands. Feel the quiet around your thoughts. And allow sleep to come naturally, the way the tide returns to the shore, slow and certain, gentle and inevitable. In a few moments, you will drift, and then drift deeper, and deeper still. It will feel like floating. It will feel like being carried. It will feel like sinking into warm, endless calm. Your breath will guide you. Your body will follow. And your mind will ease into dreams as softly as a lantern flickering out at the end of a quiet night. You are safe. You are held. You can rest now. The story is complete, and your sleep is waiting.